Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I love conversations that inspire and, as you know, get you thinking a different way, expand you. And this conversation was one of those, just because we talked about how to connect with our teens and adult children. This episode is really for every parent. I think it's essential to know how to connect with other people. You got to learn to connect with yourself by increasing your self-awareness, self-regulation, and then you can connect with others more easily. And then some people aren't going to be connectable, and that's okay. And we are responsible for our children. It's important you have a connection with them. We're going to talk about some of those hurdles and how to work through them. If you want to get on the mailing list, in my newsletter, I connect each and every episode with the resources that the guest says. So I will connect the books, and a lot of times they are Amazon affiliate links. Those do help support the podcast. So if you click on the link in the show notes or in the newsletter, those do go to support continuing the podcast. And that is so helpful. And thank you, because I am a book person, sometimes need to be reined in. And most of my guests have book recommendations, resources, or have written a book, just like my guest today. So Yshai Boussi is a family therapist in private practice who has specialized in helping teens, young adults, and families for more than 20 years. He is the author of Staying Connected with Your Teen, Polyvagal Parenting Strategies to Reduce Reactivity, Set Limits, and Build Authentic Connection. And that's key, authentic connection, to be yourselves. Yshai is also a speaker and leads webinars and workshops, classes for parents, educators, and teens and therapists. He and his wife, Mariah, also a therapist, are proud parents of a 16-year-old daughter, 12-year-old son, and adult foster son. He had so much compassion and understood that parents carry so much shame. And I think people in general just carry a lot of shame. And so if you want to build connections with other people, this episode is relevant for you. It truly is. If you're trying to evolve, work on yourself, self-regulate, understand how other people work. We talk a lot about polyvagal theory, which we'll unpack. And I highly recommend you listen to this episode. Share it with your friends and family who also need to understand how to connect better, because this is language you both can use. And if you want to get on the newsletter list, highly recommend it at Kristen, Kristen, D, Boyce, BOICE.com/free resources. And then you'll also get a free journal that will be handy in your own evolution and growth and healing. So here is my very helpful conversation with Yshai. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. How many of you struggle to talk to your kids, your teens, your adult children? You don't know what to say. You don't know how to connect. This is the episode for you. I feel like every parent needs to listen to this episode. And I actually sought my guest out because Yshai wrote a book that I just was like, I need to have him on the podcast. It's Staying Connected to Your Teen. And that title for me, there's a subtitle, which we're going to get into, but that title to me spoke to me. So welcome, Yshai, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Kristen. It's great to be here. I'm excited for this conversation.
So tell the audience how you got to be a family therapist. Like, just share a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Well, all of us, I think, get into this because there was something in our childhood that we want to improve, to go start there. But I was actually a business major in college and went that route and got a corporate job right after college. But what I also did was volunteer a couple hours a week as a mentor for an at-risk youth program. And it was a really comprehensive program with these eighth graders and lots of trainings for the mentors. And it was very interesting. And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. And so it was a 1-year commitment and I immersed myself in that. And then I had this contrast of this kind of corporate culture. And I realized there's something in this for me that just resonated and I couldn't really put words to it. So I quit that job and then I worked in residential treatment facilities for at-risk youth in my early 20s. And then I decided I wanted to be a therapist. And I just became really enamored with young people. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I seemed to have a knack for connecting with people, with young people. And then I wanted to learn more. I wanted to learn more about how to help them, theories and ideas. And I went to graduate school. And I found myself in a graduate school in Seattle called Bastyr University that focused on family systems and systems theory. And this was new to me. I didn't have kids at that point when I went to grad school. I was just all about kids, teens. Didn't really think much about parents and families and systems. And so I was forced at that point to really think not just about how do I help this individual here, but what is their context and the impact that they have in their family and their family has on them. And so then I got my first job as a therapist working in a community mental health facility where they emphasized family work. They said, you're going to meet with parents before you even meet with the teenager. They have to be, in order to come into this program, they have to be a part of it. And I said, well, this is what I was trained for. I haven't actually done it, but I've learned about it, the theories. So I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and here I was having to talk to parents. I wasn't a parent. I was so intimidated and scared. And frankly, I had a lot of judgment at that point of parents, because to that point, I really kind of had this idea that it was parents' fault. And I was here to help these kids, rescue them or something. These parents screwed their kids up. But it didn't take long for me to sit in with parents. And the more I listened, the more it was impossible for me to continue to judge them, because I listened to parent after parent. And these were pretty low socioeconomic families, and a lot of trauma and a lot of challenge. And all I could really hear after a while was just these parents who loved their kids so much, and they felt so much shame and they felt helpless. They expected to be judged. And when they weren't judged and they were just listened to, they just felt so supported and they loved their kids so much and they just wanted help. And so I learned so much from that experience, how to work with families and the importance of parents in their relationship with their kids. And actually these kids, even teenagers, I learned, want a relationship with their parents. They want to connect with their parents. They don't know how. And parents don't know how to connect with them, or even if they're supposed to, or even if it's okay to do it. And so what I learned early in my career was that, yes, we have to preserve adolescence, autonomy, independence, all that. But what they want within that context, they also want to spend time with their parents in a healthy way. So how do I do that? How do I make that work and facilitate that? And that was just really interesting to me. And to this day, that's what I've been really passionate about, is facilitating those connections between parents and teenagers.
And you've got this book that you wrote. How did you birth this book? Like, how did this come through you to write?
Great question. It was really in me when I started writing it a few years ago, because now I've been doing this work for over 20 years, sitting with countless parents and families. I've been leading lots of workshops and classes for parents, countless hours talking to teenagers. And it was a process of learning about what works and what doesn't. What have I shared that parents have found it to be ahas? What kind of interventions have I shared with families in the room together that they have reported to me that has been really helpful to them? What is the content? What is some of the things that I keep hearing over and over from parents and families that they're telling me, like, thank you, that was a game changer for me. That was huge. That really helps me feel less reactive and understand my kiddo better. And now I see why connection is so important. I'm going to really emphasize that. So just doing it, as you know, in this work, you kind of start to kind of get certain things of like, okay. And so I really kind of put 20 years of my work into into this book, the ideas and concepts that have been really helpful for the people I've worked with.
So tell me about the subtitle. We chatted a little bit before we hit record. How did you come about with the subtitle? And then how do you explain polyvagal theory to parents and teens?
Yeah, absolutely. And teens too. The polyvagal theory it's not a very accessible word, and I totally don't go away. This is really simple. This will be very helpful. And I explain it in very lay terms. So the vast majority of us therapists know about this model and use it. So if you have a therapist, there's a good chance they incorporate this into their work. It's very widely known, evidence-based, all the things, but it hasn't really made it to the general public. And what it is basically is it's a model for understanding how our nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, interacts with the world and how it affects the way we think about ourselves, how it affects the way we think about others, how it affects the way we think about the world. And so what does our autonomic, another word that I like to use that just makes more sense is automatic. So this is the part of our nervous system that has all these automatic functions. Our breathing is automatic, our heart rate's automatic, and we sweat automatically, our pupils dilate automatically, all these things, our digestion's automatic. And these are designed to help us survive. We need these systems. And so it is not our thinking, our logic that is what happens first generally. It is our nervous system, our body responds to the environment. And there are 3 states of the autonomic nervous system, 3 states that we all experience. And you can think of this as a hierarchy. Think about a ladder where you move up and down the rungs of the ladder. The lowest state, the bottom rungs, are what I call shutdown. The technical term is dorsal vagal. So this is that state when we're just kind of low energy, kind of meh, immobilized. It could be depressed, but it could just be just a regular day where I just kind of like, it's raining and cold. I just don't really want to get off the couch. I'm just kind of like, I don't really feel like getting stuff done. Low energy. As we move up the rungs of the ladder to the kind of middle state, I call that activated. The scientific term is sympathetic. So that's when there's mobilized energy. It's adrenaline, it's cortisol. That's where anxiety lives, or anger. It's where our kids are really fidgety, or they're bouncing off the walls, or they're intense, or they can't let go of an argument, or where we're just like running all over the place and we're really intense. That intensity, that's a physiological state. And then as we move up, and this is in order of evolution as well, the most evolved state on the top rungs is, I call it regulated, and the scientific term is ventral vagal. That's when we feel connected to others and ourselves. We feel calm, we feel peaceful. It could be excited, it could be joyful, but we just feel good. We feel grounded. And it doesn't always have to be happy. We can actually be sad in a regulated state, but we feel okay. We feel together, controlled. And this is the only state where we can learn, where we can connect, where we can receive connection. There's a saying in polyvagal theory that a healthy nervous system is a flexible nervous system. And so the goal isn't to be regulated all the time, but how are we with moving and adjusting when we get activated, when we feel when we're in a shutdown state? So this, of course, is so relevant to our kids, because some of us have kids that get more stuck in an activated state or more stuck in a shutdown state, or they oscillate between activation and shutdown. And so how do we help our kids move towards regulation? Because as a parent, I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son as well. They just bounce around. And so I'm always like, how do I help them get more regulated? Because only when they're regulated can we have a thoughtful conversation, can we have impact. Sometimes when they're activated or they're shut down, we talk. It's kind of a natural instinct, and they will get more activated or more shut down. And so really understanding, I need to help their nervous system get more regulated, and then we can talk. So understanding that it is a body-oriented thing, an automatic process, I found for myself personally as a parent, and also for the families I work with, it's really a game changer, this idea of the polyvagal theory, which is really like understanding the nervous system.
And that's why you have this as the underpinnings of the book, and how you're teaching how to connect to your teens and your kids.
Absolutely.
Like that's fundamental for you to begin the connection process.
Absolutely. There's no connection in an activated or shut down state for you, for me, for our kids. Yeah, exactly.
Do you teach the parents to recognize their own state? Where are they on those 3 levels? Is that like the first place to begin, is their own recognition?
I do. Yeah. I'll sit with the family. And as you know, in this, this is very common because families, it's where it brings out most intense energy. Just walking in the room, I can feel the activated energy. And so everyone's sitting down, they're nervous, they're uncomfortable. And I just normalize that and I explain, okay, this is going to be, or if they're not, as we talk, as people are honest with each other, someone's going to get activated, and that's okay. So there's some ground rules I'll talk about, and you might even step out, and that might be a really good thing to do. And then you try to come back And then we're going to work on getting regulated together in space. As families, it's really hard sometimes. Parents often struggle with, I want to have a conversation, but I get so activated really easily because they're disrespectful or dismissive, or they ignore me, or they don't even seem to care about the mistake they made. And kids might feel the same thing. Sometimes teenagers are like, I want to talk, but my mom or my dad gets so they get so mad. They won't use activated sometimes, but they'll be like, they just get so mad and I feel like I'm going to get in trouble, or they're going to like get angry or something like that. And so then there's just a lot of avoidance. But the longer we avoid, then it's just everyone gets kind of shut down. And that's when we see our kids just get they seem sort of more depressed and stop trying. And it's hard to reach them when they're at the bottom rungs of the ladder.
Yeah. So how do you help parents first get regulated? Because that's imperative that they are regulating to help their kids regulate. Is that imperative or no?
It is imperative. Yeah, that's such an important point. I'm glad you brought that up because one of the tenets of this model, this way of thinking, is a concept called co-regulation. And this language is Stephen Porges who discovered this. And Deb Dana actually is a colleague of his who came up with this ladder metaphor that I use a lot.
She's going to be on the podcast next, I think in a couple months. So.
Oh, fantastic. That is a must listen to. She's great. So she'll be able to really do a great job with this. A co-regulation it's really intuitive. We know that with babies, they're literally born attached. We know that babies need to be rocked and held and cooed and soothed. What are we doing? That's co-regulation. A newborn baby needs a calm, regulated other to help them soothe and regulate. A toddler, they need a calm, regulated other to help them calm when they have a fit or a tantrum. Well, it turns out that need doesn't end once we become teenagers or young adults or older adults or 100 years old. Co-regulation is this human need for another regulated other to help us regulate. Those of us in relationships with our partner, we know that when my wife is regulated, it helps me get so much calmer, so much faster. When she's not, when she's activated, it's really hard for me to get regulated and calm, and vice versa. Her towards me. We always need regulated others. And often as parents, look, we're busy. We got stress in our own lives, and we're not always very good at staying regulated ourselves. And our kids, that's our nervous system. Is listening, not their logic. They know we love them. They know that we care about them and all the things. But if we're like, go, 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 sometimes a kid is a kind of a slower processor or has a different kind of more relaxed personality. And if they have a type A parent, for example, there's a mismatch there that kids can get very overwhelmed because their brain and their body just doesn't work that way. And so they can get activated really easily because if their parents have a lot of energy that they just don't have. So co-regulation is a key word, a key thing to think about when your kid is having a hard time staying regulated ourselves.
So that's one of the key factors in building a safe connection. So how do you help parents, first of all, and the kids regulate? We know breath is important. How do you help them begin to regulate themselves?
Such a great question. And I'll start with breathing. So a lot of people get turned off by breathing, especially young. It's like, okay, I know deep breaths. And some will say it doesn't help me. To be more specific though, sometimes this can be helpful is to say, it's not just a deep breath, actually. It's the long, slow exhale that has unique importance. That is a brake system for our nervous system that slows us down. So I'll practice with them. And it's actually interesting that for some people, young people, it makes them more stressed out at first. And they'll say, it doesn't help me. It actually makes me more stressed out when I breathe, take slow, deep breaths. Well, that's a cue that they're actually very activated a lot and their nervous system does not know how to settle. They might seem like it on the outside, but they're probably more likely to be shut down than calm because those can look very similar. So if they're reporting that a long, slow exhale is uncomfortable, all the more reason they need to practice it. And so I'll just point that out and I'll see them improve and then they'll start to report, oh yeah, I see that is helpful now. So that's one thing with the breath. But the most important thing I would say is awareness to start with. Is just notice without judgment. I know you've had Kristen on this podcast and she's amazing. And she talks as the guru on that concept of self-compassion is just recognizing it, notice when you're activated and just, what do you notice about that? Like I'll point that out in sessions. I'll help parents. Do you notice like when you're talking, notice what your kid's doing. Notice how they're more fidgety than they were. Do you see face kind of being really tight? Or do you notice that you're being really activated right now by what your kid is saying and how they're acting? Do you notice that? You look like you might need a break even right now. Can you see that? And so awareness without judgment, like it's okay. What we say and how we act may not be okay, but what we feel is always okay. And so first it's just that awareness, just normalizing it. Like, yeah, I get activated. I tell people all the time, my wife's a family therapist also, and we get activated like the best of them. Like parenting, when you're really involved as a parent, it's real. It's hard, especially nowadays. So it's flexibility. It's about recovery and getting better at finding tools. So one is awareness. And then it's like continuing. It's amazing. And you know this, I'm sure, because it's like, it's amazing how powerful just awareness opens the doors to solutions. We can give lots of solutions, but when people are regulated and they just notice, they're really good at coming up with things that work for them because it is an individual thing. For some people, it's like walking the dog. It's going to bed a little bit earlier. It's reading a novel. It's listening to music. There are a few principles that we know that are science-based that help regulate our nervous system. So these are things like nature, music, movement, sleep, connection. Those things are just natural nervous system regulators. So those are a few things to think about.
Okay, this is so good. I have so many questions. I just want to jump in. If someone says, I don't even know where to begin to connect, they're shut down, they're on their phone, they're on their device, they seem like they don't want to talk to me. I'm being a parent. Like this parent is like, I don't even know. They don't want to talk to me. I ask them a question, like, fine, no, whatever, good. They don't want to connect. Let's just say we have a parent listening. This is how it goes in my house. Where do they start?
Yeah, I've been there. I've had those moments with my kiddo. So we have to be patient, not take it personally. I would say that number one is not take it personally.
Not take it personally. I just want to pause on that note. How hard is that for people? It's so hard for people because like, well, you're being disrespectful. You're being rude. We label it, not taking it personally. I just wanted to pause on that note because I think this is something as a parent, I have worked on this because I'm like, this isn't about me. Let me be present. Super important rule. Okay, continue. I just want to make sure we paused on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad because it is, I come up with this, repeating that over and over again too. It's not personal. So once we know it's not personal, then we can kind of start to be curious. Curiosity is a superpower as parents if we can hone it, which is what else might be going on that they're giving me one word answers. So it could be the timing. So time and place is really important with teenagers. They maybe just got home from school or they're like just are stressed about homework or it's just not a good time for them for whatever reason. So it could be that. It could be they don't really know what they feel and think. They're not sure. And this is even more common with boys, or I work with them on language and vocabulary and helping them like, I don't know what I feel. So then if that is the case, where they're like, I don't really know. Sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction as well. If they don't know, I call it a drop-down menu. Just like on a website, you click and there's like 3 options that scroll down. Like you can, and this is where staying curious as a parent, I'm wondering, how are you doing? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling frustrated by what I said earlier, or that rule we just enforced? Are you feeling disappointed about missing out on being able to hang out because your friends went and did that and you weren't able to go? So offering some options, some possibilities. And then sometimes they'll be like, yeah, I think it's probably that third one, or maybe it's that disappointment part. And then that can sometimes open things up. So that's another thing to think about is they don't know. So that's a way to help them. And it does take effort. It takes really kind of putting ourselves in their shoes. Like, what might they be feeling right now? We're not telling them how they feel, but we're giving them options. And then another one is sometimes a lot of kids and teenagers in particular expect are used to their parents only asking them things when it comes to responsibilities. So they're used to being asked about grades. They're used to being asked about, did they get their chores done? They expect to be asked about things that are more about things the parents want for them, that are going to help them in their future or things like that, that aren't so much about them. And so your teen could be tuning you out and not making an effort because they expect that they don't feel that you're really interested in their world and their experience. You're only interested in things that matter to you, like school and chores or things, responsibilities. So ask more questions about things that they're into. And you might be surprised at how much they start talking more. Video games, pop culture people, whatever, their character sheet in D&D or whatever is going on, because that's about them. And so, but then they feel like you care about something they're interested in, and that pays dividends over time. So that's another thing, another reason why kids sometimes just give one word answers. And then sometimes there's just other things, like I said, other things going on, and we got to just kind of be investigators and try to be curious about what might else, some other reason why they might not be talking to us.
I think it's so important to really see your kid. One of my kids is 17. She wanted me to go to this concert with her. So she's like, please listen to this album. Listen. And I didn't listen to the album because I got busy. And she's like, did you listen to the album? And I said, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I haven't had time to listen to it. You don't care. She's able to verbalize because we have an open system here. She can say how she feels. And I said, thank you so much for sharing how you feel. I could see how that would feel for you, that you feel like I don't care. I am going to prioritize listening to that. That's how it landed. That since I didn't listen to the album, that was what kind of she felt. We explored that a little more about what she wanted me so much to love the music as much as she did. That was really what it was about. She's like, I just wanted to share this experience with you and for you to love the music at the concert as much as I did. And you'd be just as excited now. I said, well, we could have different levels of excitement. And I get you want me to know the songs and be excited. But that's an example of paying attention and talking about what they like and creating a conversation around it.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love how you modeled humility as a parent. I can see why you felt that way, and I'm sorry. And I didn't realize how important that was. Kids will give us so many mulligans as if we can just acknowledge it. And they'll be like, they're so forgiving.
And that's a repair. Like that acknowledgement instead of getting defensive.
Right.
It's easy to do. Like, oh, I'm so busy and I didn't have time. Like,
you know how much I do? Do you know how much I play
it doesn't mean I don't care about you because I didn't listen. I mean, I could have gone down and I could feel it. And I was like, take a breath, see her, acknowledge her, because and then I can make the repair there. So I think that piece is so important that you're saying. I don't want to underestimate that, especially for teens. But I think in life, this is for your kids. This is like, be curious, notice, ask questions. What about screens and teens and the connection part? Seems sweet because they're on social media, they're on screens. And I hear a lot of parents feeling really activated, even though we're on screens, which is the ironic part of the whole thing. We're all struggle with screens now. But what do you say about connection in screens and how that plays out?
My take is maybe different than others. So people think should never just take whatever we say, but like hear other people and kind of works for you and your family. I think there's not a one size fits all approach to this. I think there's it's easy to be terrified by social media because the headlines are so scary. This is destroying our kids and everything's the fault of social media. And I think we got to really slow down on that because there's an opportunity to connect and there's an opportunity for rupture. If we just blame everything on these phones and on Instagram and TikTok, then we miss out on opportunities to really get to know and understand our kids, because the evidence does not show that there's a correlation, but it's not causation. It's not causing our kids to struggle with mental health. It could be making it worse if they're already struggling, but all the more reason for us to get to know their world. Social media is not going away. These phones aren't going away. So we have to figure out how to work with them. And to do that, we have to be curious, going back to that, and ask them questions that might be uncomfortable about who do you follow? Who are your favorite influencers? Like, what do you really like? What are ways that Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever are helpful to you? And then are there ways that you feel like it isn't helpful and it's distracting and not so good? Like really just seeing them in a comprehensive way and not just a bad thing for us to check out. So by staying curious, it allows us to be involved, and they're more likely to be open with us when we are realistic about it. Because teenagers are smart, and the studies show like they know there are problems with it, that it's messed up, that there's lies, that it can sometimes make you miss out or feel insecure, that there's nonsense and garbage on there. They also know that it's super like helpful and positive as well at times and useful. So we lose credibility when we just try to check out and just try to limit. Gosh, I guess it's a necessary evil that I have to deal with, but I hate this. My kid's addicted. Some kids are, but it's also thrown out way too often, in my opinion, that term. And again, it just shuts them down. We don't want our kids to come to us if they have a problem online, if someone's cyberbullying them, if somebody sent them an inappropriate thing and they don't know what to do, or there's a social problem. Do we want them to come to us to ask for help, or do we want them to be like, no way, I'm not telling my parents this because they're going to take away my phone, or they're going to take off all my social media apps. So I think it's like not to try to be balanced in how we think about it and how we talk to our kids about it, and not just see if your kid is struggling. Now, there might need to be limits and there might need to be some conversations about boundaries, but don't just blame social media. Your kid might need some extra support, but this is not all caused by that. And then, of course, modeling. None of us are perfect. It's okay. But again, like you said so well, like we can just acknowledge it and say it like, I'm not always a great role model. I need to work on this too. Let's work on it together. And so ask yourself, do my kids see me just hanging out on the couch, twiddling my thumb without my phone around? Do they see me going to bed without my phone right next to my nightstand? No judgment. You're not a bad parent if you do all those things. It's okay, but it's just something for us to reflect on. Our kids can help us grow as well. We can grow together.
They're the greatest awakeners in my life. I mean, they mirror back so much of our unhealed wounds. And when we can really stay open and curious and take responsibility, this is the freedom that we allow them to be open with us and feel safe with us. It's like if they share something that's hard, feedback from me, I said, thank you for sharing that. I really am going to work on XYZ if they bring something up. That takes a lot of work. Because otherwise you could get defensive and you triggered in the story. How much does our shame as parents block our ability to connect? So if I make up a story that you think I'm a terrible mother or terrible father, or you just don't appreciate me, you're ungrateful, you don't care about me, how much does that impact our connection with our kids?
It's huge. And we do have a culture that can be very judgmental. And I think particularly as we parent teenagers, it can be a lot more isolating. I think when our kids are younger, there's a lot more support in groups and we talk and, oh, my kid's still wets the bed sometimes, or my kid's having a tantrum. Oh, man, like people are a lot freer to talk about that stuff when kids are little. It gets harder. And because there is that shame or this like, it feels embarrassing, or you feel like you're doing something wrong or you're bad if your teenager is struggling and people are posting about my honor roll student, my kid's going to this college and my kid's doing it and the neighbors are, and so we could feel really bad. And I want to tell people over and over again, I see kids teenagers and young adults who are thriving, who had parents who have made a lot of mistakes and have not done the things that I would have wanted them to do. But somehow that teenager's doing well. And I see parents in my personal life and in my work who are amazing, doing things better than I'm doing them. And yet their kid is still having a really hard time and really struggling. And it is not because of bad parenting. How your kid functions is not a reflection of you as a parent, for better or for worse. We got to try to get over this good parent, bad parent thing. Instead of like, what does my kid need right now? How can I be the best parent for my particular child? And if you have two kids, like I have two kids, they need two different types of parenting and styles. So it's like, really finding community, I think, for parents is a really important way to overcome this shame. Because then I just finished up a parenting class that I was running, and like they come in for tools and strategies. You probably know this, and they want ideas, but then they leave saying, this community was huge because I saw I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who struggles with their kid. And I think parents just need to hear that over and over again. If you are struggling, you are not the only one. And it is not because you're a bad parent. There might be things for you to work on for sure, but that's not bad parenting. It's just we need to continue to evolve with our kids.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's so helpful. And if you need to listen to this on repeat, let's say you're really in this shame spiral and you feel like, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? Please listen to this to know that you are loved and enough and that you matter. And because that shame spiral can take us into such isolation and dark places. So I just want to acknowledge every parent out there. This is not for the faint of heart. It's amazing. And it's going to pull up all our stuff. Talk a little bit about projections. For those that might not know, like we might project that, oh, I wasn't the popular person in school, so I want my kid to be, or I didn't get the role on the football team. I'm making this up, but whatever, or the cheerleader. And so I project these unmet or idealized images that I didn't get onto my child. Those are examples of projection. How does that impact connection?
Well, it certainly can get in the way, but it's also natural. I think that for us to do that, we're all works in progress. Some of us have done more work, some of us have done less. But we're going to get triggered during the teen years, most of us, at least, where I remember walking my daughters, this was like in sixth grade or maybe even fifth grade. And we were walking home from school because it's our neighborhood school. And I'd go pick her up and we'd walk home. And she talked about how some kids were mean to her at school. And I'd never heard that before from her because she seemed to make friends really easily. And I got triggered in a way that I was not expecting at all, because that happened to me when I was a kid. And I got this automatic reaction of like, that is not okay. I'm going to talk to the principal. We're going to make sure that is not allowed. What is happening over there? I'm going to find out. And I had to like recognize, okay, she's just sharing something. I am really triggered right now. And I had to take some deep breaths and then remind myself. A mantra for me is, sometimes I have a lot of them, but one is like, this is not about me. I need to be present for her. And so then I had to like, let me ask questions and try to understand more before I project all my own stuff onto her. And fortunately, in that moment, I had the wherewithal to do that. And then as I asked more questions, I realized that she's fine. It was just kind of a small thing, and it's not that big of a deal. And I don't even really need to do anything about it. She just needs to be listened to and heard and validated. And we moved on. But I had to catch it. So I think that's going to happen. And sometimes it's the opposite too, is where if we were a high achiever, or I was a straight A star person and my kid is struggling or doesn't have that, and then I'm kind of pushing them because I think I did this, I did all these things, you can. And I think I can justify it by saying, well, I just believe in you. But it's like, they're different. Their brain works different. The culture, the day times are different now. And so we can project in that way as well. Some of our inner perfectionism, or kind of how we achieved and when wanting that for them. So it does require to like recognize that, notice when this is about us and our stuff, slow down, and then get back into, again, that word curiosity.
That's key. Because I see it too with introverts and extroverts. So maybe you're an extrovert and your child or your teen is an introvert. It can be hard, or vice versa. It can be hard for parents to understand different personalities. They're just created differently. How hard is that for connection, like for some parents?
I think that can be really hard. And I understand, like, there's a fear of like, well, my kid's not going to have friends. I'm worried they're just in their room all the time. And you're really social and you were always had lots of friends and you love people and your kid doesn't want to get out of the room. So I think in that specific case, two things is like, one is to think about kids only need one or two good friends to get that social connection. Healthy, good, meaningful friendships only need to be one or two. They don't need to have tons of friends. And some kids have tons of friends, but none of them are really close and meaningful. And that's not always great either. So that's to remember that your kid doesn't have to be a social butterfly. They just need one or two good friends. If your kid isn't socializing, then it could be that they are more introverted, but it also could be that maybe there's some social anxiety going on. And then again, try to like, instead of projecting kind of what you want for them or worries, try to like help them through that. And you might need professional support, but it could be that they're avoiding, and it could just be that they're at school all day and there's so much socialization and they're just spent. They don't get their energy off of it. They're doing okay, but they need to just zone out and be alone for a few hours at the end of a really busy day. So really trying to understand, and again, ask them the questions. And they say, I don't know, use that drop-down menu. Is it that you're overwhelmed all day at school? Is it that you just don't have friends yet? Or is it that you have friends and you just kind of want some downtime?
And as we kind of close out, I just want to mention one more thing. There's two more questions. Empathy. How important is that in connection with teens? I mean, we know it's.
Yeah. I have a whole chapter on my book called PACE from the psychologist Daniel Hughes. And it stands for, this is the attitude of connection, not a technique, because kids see through.
Yes.
We're full of it, but it's an attitude, a way of being in the world, even with coworkers or neighbors. PACE stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. So playfulness is just a lightheartedness. We need to have joy in our relationships with people in whatever way that looks. Acceptance means all thoughts and feelings are okay. Not all behaviors, but whatever they think is okay. And so accepting, that's how you think. I don't agree, maybe, but that's where you're at. So I need to start there. And then we talked about curiosity. And what curiosity does is it makes space for empathy. When we ask questions, then we can understand more about how they're really doing without guessing or making assumptions. So empathy is born out of curiosity because we don't know. I don't know why you've been in your room for 3 hours. Maybe you're doing homework. Maybe you're stressed out. Maybe you're having a lot of fun playing a game. Maybe you're taking a nap because you're really tired. Maybe you're avoiding a conversation with me because you know I'm going to ask you to do your chores. I don't know. When I go check in with you in your room, I want to have some curiosity with it. And then whatever your answer is, I have acceptance. And then that's going to help me have empathy. Oh, you're worried that every time we talk, I'm telling you to do something. So you don't really want to talk to me because you think I'm just going to have you do chores or something. Like, now I know that. Okay. And then you're really overwhelmed because school is really stressful and you have finals coming up and your friend didn't talk to you today at school and there's drama there. And so, oh, I didn't know that. Now I know that. I could see why that would be really hard and why you do just want to be in your room so much. Now I have more empathy, but it came from that place of just trying to ask questions and be curious.
Yeah. And I just want everybody to listen. I can feel your natural ability for empathy. Like this isn't in your head. This is your embodiment of empathy. Like you're just a naturally, is that a good description? Like you seem very naturally empathic.
Yeah, I mean, I try to really, I'm not perfect at all, especially in my own
No such
family, but
thing.
I try to embody this stuff. And especially with my own kids, like my own daughter, it's like we have a great relationship. She super thinks it's really cool that I wrote a book about parenting teens, but I get it wrong. And I just try to like, I don't know, tell me. There's a lot of humility involved. And
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not sure what to do here. And I could have it wrong. And with clients and just our work is just like, I mean, I don't know. I try to just
Because you don't need
embody.
to be right. That's the thing about empathy. You don't need to be right. It's okay if you get it wrong. It's okay. You can quickly say, oh, and that makes sense that you feel you're not mad, you're sad. Oh, that makes a lot of sense that you feel sad. And we don't know how to do it. So listen to really your own self talk too. I think that when you can be tender with yourself and start there, and that's hard because we have an inner critic perhaps, or we have a lot of trauma. So I think that's another place to start is how empathic are you to yourself? And then it's going to flow a little bit more. Now, are we always going to be empathic to ourselves? No. What is your favorite book? Maybe not favorite, but been the most impactful in your life or meant the most to you?
Yeah. I think a couple books. I tend to read nonfiction a lot, and I don't read as many novels. I'm actually trying to work on that. So this is obviously a common book, but it's Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. He just writes about the history of humans and our species and just that context of how we kind of got to be the way we were. I just found that it was just really engaging and interesting and a book that really kind of gives me some context. And I enjoyed that book a lot. And then there's this person, Daniel Hughes, wrote a book called Attachment Focused Family Therapy. It's more of a therapist oriented book, but he also has some books for parents, some parenting books that I love that are where he talks about pace. He has a book called Brain Based Parenting as well. And that model of thinking has been really impactful for me in terms of just thinking about connection, not as a technique, but as an attitude, as a way of being. And so that's something I'm just thinking about a lot, not just in my work and for myself, but also just in the world. How do we bring more connection and understanding it through we have such a activated society. People are on edge and nervous and in that sympathetic fight or flight or freeze so much. And so much of what we're watching is activating us and that we aren't able to learn. We're not able to empathize in that state. And so I'm actually reading Kristen Neff's book right now just to
Fierce
work
Compassion, that one or a different
on the one before that about
Compassion?
self-compassion.
No.
Yeah. Because it's also not too woo-woo either, because it's science-based and there's a lot of research behind it. So just trying to continue to grow and work on myself and just think about kind of the world. A memoir, I really love Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, his memoir. That book's really funny and very interesting and just hearing about just from a different culture, a different perspective.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and what you're doing in the world and working with teens. It's a gift, honestly. Where can people find you if they want to just know more about you?
Yeah. So my website, YshaiBoussi.com, YSHAIBOUSSI.com. I've got lots of stuff on there, some resources, some articles I've written, some video clips, interviews, things like that. And on Instagram, I'm at Your Teen Therapist. So I really try to post things that are helpful for parents with teenagers and young adults. That's kind of what I specialize in. And so I try to reels or just little tidbits here and there that might be helpful on our journey. We all need reminders. Those are the two places, probably the best two places to find me.
Great. Thank you so, so, so much for being here. This was everything and more. And you shared so much wisdom with us. And thank you, thank you, thank you. So staying connected to your teen. I'm going to link it in the show notes. I'll link it in the newsletter. So get it. I highly recommend it. And thank you, Yshai, for being here today.
This was really fun, Kristen. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, Boice.com. Thanks and have a great day.